You're tuned into the hottest paranormal life show on YouTube, Into the Fringe, where we discuss lost civilizations, UFOs, cryptids, unsolved mysteries, megalithic structures, extraterrestrials, interdimensional portals, time skips, and more. Don't change that channel, because now you are leaving the mainstream and entering into the fringe.
Greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and welcome to Into the Fringe number 42. And our guest this evening is Albert Rosales. And Albert was born in Cuba and migrated to the U.S. in 1966. He had several unusual incidents as a young man while living in Cuba, and such incidents continued as an adult in the U.S. Rosales became interested in unusual phenomena and UFOs at a young age, but soon directed his focus to the crux of the phenomena, the humanoids, entities, extraterrestrials, UFO-nauts, etc. He began collecting data on such encounters from worldwide sources in the late 80s. He has a current database of over 20,000 entries, which is updated and corrected daily, and has published 16 books to date. Welcome back to the show, Albert Rosales.
Hey everybody, I'm glad to be back. And I'm ready
It's great to have you.
Thank you for inviting me again. I'm ready to talk about the book 1950 through 1954.
And that's the book we have right here.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
And at the end of the show, we will be giving away a signed copy of this book, courtesy of Albert. So make sure and stick around to the end of the show, because one lucky winner will get this book.
This is the decade.
And thank you very much.
You're welcome. This is the decade from when the first humanoid cases started coming out in large numbers, like the 1954 wave in France and several other places.
Albert, can you get a little closer to your mic?
So, we're going to be talking about that.
It's a little hard to hear you.
Okay, you hear me better?
Yes, that's better. Thanks. We'll say hello to some folks here in the stream. Canadian Spider-Man, hail. Don McDouglas,
You hear me?
who
Okay,
was our winner last month. Anti-derivative Jill is here. Good evening, Jill. Ivan Ivanovich is here. Good evening. And the lovely Sherry is here. Hello, Sherry. Greetings, Darius Munchausen. And Carol's Cookies. Hello. So let's go ahead, Albert, and dive right into the cases. I would like to start off by showing folks the
I'm back.
All right.
My internet is like, for some reason,
It's happening to everybody. Trust me.
The Men in Black knew we're having the show tonight.
Yep. So I wanted to share with everybody, if I can find my mouse cursor, the graphic here for our first case. And this is for 1930. So we're probably going to have to move a little bit forward.
Yeah, you have to... I sent you the 1950 through 1954. You should have those.
Probably a mistake on my part then. Wouldn't be
The last
surprised.
email I
Wouldn't be
sent.
the first time.
Yeah, the last email I sent you. Let's see.
Let's try. This one here. That one's in 1930. Go back to email.
Yeah, the last email I sent you. Those are the cases.
Okay.
Let me send them again.
I'll download that.
Okay, you found them? Okay, great.
50 to 54.
There you go, that one. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see if I can snag that one.
Some really interesting cases in that during that decade. I wish I could include
Is
them
this the
all,
one
but
that starts out date 1949 or 50?
Yeah, from
Okay.
Poland. Yeah, that one. Correct.
Yeah. All right. So I can move this here, and pardon me, everybody, for the delay. So one-man show. I'm my own producer. But thanks again to my wonderful mods. Okay. Do you want to go ahead and get us started, Albert?
Sure. Okay, this case here, it was either 1949 or 1950. The researcher, Mr. Jarosław Krasnowski and Damian Trela from Poland, which I've been in contact with Damian a couple times. Could not pinpoint the exact date, but it occurred at a place called Gory Sowi near Bielawa, Poland. In an evening, a 22-year-old man walking on a path in a mountainous region noticed a strange, small entity that was wearing a grayish outfit, standing on the path about 100 meters ahead of him. He couldn't see the face, which was hidden under a hood. It was like wearing a hood. This figure was the size of a child, but moved around like an adult. After a while, 4 similar entities appeared. They looked identical to the first one. They stood around as if waiting for somebody. The man then heard a sound resembling the tweeting of birds, like tweets. After a while, 3 of the figures walked into the forest on the opposite side of the path. The 2 remaining entities seemed to gesture between them and then follow the same direction. The witness additionally described these entities at about 0.20 meters in height, wearing close-fitting gray, coveralls, jumpsuit with pointing hoods. And according to the witness, during the encounter, he felt completely isolated from the environment, as if someone had sucked him into another world. It was like what is known the OZ effect. It was like he felt
The Oz effect?
Oz, there you go. I'm sorry, OZ, yeah. When the creatures disappeared back into the forest, he felt undescribable relief.
I bet. I would.
Feeling isolated like that in the middle by yourself, that would be...
Yeah, the Oz effect is when all the insects and birds and animals stop making noise and you're just sort of alone with whatever is there.
You feel like you're in a cone of silence.
Yeah, the cone of silence.
You can't hear
Back to Get Smart. I love that show. Okay, so this one took place in Seabury, Kentucky in 1949. The time was night. The 2 witnesses were entering a parked truck in front of the house when one of them noticed a bright light approaching them from the direction of the railroad tracks. Moments later, as the witness attempted to start the truck, the light got closer. It floated toward the front of the truck, and now both witnesses could see the outline of a human-like figure directly underneath the light. Both witnesses became frightened and scrambled out of the truck. One of them momentarily froze and could not move. Finally, as they ran into the house to get further witnesses, the floating man and the light had already vanished. Now, Albert, something that I wanted to mention here, you're familiar with Mark Davenport, correct?
Yes.
So his book is called Visitors from Time, The Secret of the UFOs. And I put on his lecture back in 1993, I think, and again in 1995, and again in sometime in between there. He was a mechanical engineer, and it was his hypothesis that the UFOs are us from the future.
Time travelers.
Or potentially another civilization. Like if we destroy ourselves, or there's, abrupt, irrevocable climate change that destroys our civilization, the next one that does, become civilized might come back in time to see what happened to this one. So his contention was whenever a UFO or a craft would come into close proximity to people and they felt that frozen effect, that it had to do not with the electrogravitic control or propulsion, but because they had a field of different time than we have. There were many reports, and I'm sure you've seen dozens and dozens of reports of dogs that slow down as they're running toward the thing. People that start walking maybe with a gun, start walking toward the craft, and then they feel like they're walking through mud, and they describe being very, very slow.
Or some places when they hit an invisible barrier too, when they approach the object and they can't go any further.
And when they get to that point where they're absolutely frozen, they can still think and look around and things like that. But that's typically when the Oz effect takes place, right?
Right. Yeah. It's plausible. I do believe that there's a possibility that a lot of these aliens are possibly from the future. Maybe they have come to warn us. There's been a lot of cases in which the entities or the aliens or whoever they might be, they warn us that we're headed into either we do this or we do that, or this is going to be it. There's been civilizations before us that have been destroyed themselves. I believe there used to be an Atlantis. I really believe that they destroyed themselves.
There's definitely some kind of a civilization that was a worldwide civilization that had an advanced technology, and we, from First Nations peoples and Native Americans all over the world, everybody talks about we are descended from the sky people. And they have legends and myths about the people that came from the sky. That doesn't necessarily mean that they came from the stars, but it doesn't mean that they didn't. And I think that there's a good chance that all of these different early civilizations, the Maya, Inca, the Toltec, all of the Mesoamerican cultures, things like that, that they were given the gifts of civilization from these more advanced technology civilizations, whether they were human, whether they were post-human, extra-human, crypto-terrestrial, who knows? But they definitely were all over the planet.
Maybe we evolved to another race of superhumans or
It's absolutely possible. Yeah.
Who knows?
We don't know where they come from, but before the wheel was invented, the pyramids were built. So that's kind of a tough one. But let's get back to your
Okay, the next case.
case here.
Okay, this is 1950, unknown month, exact date. It's from Chile. It's a hot place for encounters. It's from a place called San Antonio in Chile.
Oh, I see what you did there. It's a hot place for encounters, Chile.
Yeah. Oh,
Ba-dum-bum.
I didn't mean to do that. From the 5th region of Chile. Anyway, it was after going to the market to buy fish for his mother. They witnessed a man named Raulito decided to stay behind with friends and go to a place called Santo Domingo to smoke and drink wine. While there, a strange-looking elderly man with a long white beard and greenish, like green face, approached them. Terrified, Raulito could only stare at the strange figure, which had large, blazing, staring eyes. The stranger was wearing a tight-fitting black coverall and appeared to be upset over something. The witness, Raulito, go right through him, transparent, and eventually vanished. Terrified, Raulito ran home and asked his mom for forgiveness, I guess for being late. This is from a Chilean researcher, Roberto Osmer Bettiger, who sent the information directly to me. Now, this is interesting because it seems like it could have been a holographic image from somewhere. There's many cases like that in which the entity or the alien appears to be not three-dimensional, but appears to be like an image or two-dimensional or a holographic.
A projection.
A projection, if you will, yeah. And I guess they were their own place at their own time, and I guess this person, whatever he was, appeared there. And it's weird that he had a long white beard. I have so many cases of entities with white beards. I don't know.
I know there are a lot of excuse me. There are a lot of Bigfoot cases where people throw something and it goes through the Bigfoot or the entity, or like in Skinwalker Ranch, there was a Sasquatch type creature that went right up to the standing rock at Skinwalker Ridge and just went right into it, like there was a door there, but of course there wasn't.
Well, for them, maybe there was. They're in their own frequency, like you said.
Okay, so this case is near Hanga Easter Island, Isla de Pascua, Chile.
Yeah, that's the translation of Easter Island, Isla de Pascua in Chile also.
And this one says, Vera Ika, known writer and poet of the Rapa Nui language, recalled a strange incident she experienced as a little girl. At the time, she would walk every evening along the same path to meet her father, who worked at a nearby airport. That evening, they were both returning home, and she recalls that the sun had not yet set. Suddenly, she heard a loud noise and turned around to see a strange craft shaped like a disc, which was hovering above a nearby hill. Moments later, the object flew over the path in which they were and landed on a field in a nearby house. As it landed, she could see the grass moving and the ground being heavily disturbed, apparently due to some sort of propulsion system. The craft was about 5 meters in diameter and had about the same height. However, the most bizarre part of the encounter was about to unfold. The craft had landed close to an apparent Rapa Nui man, or native, who was wearing a white shirt and a normal set of pants, giving the appearance that he had been waiting for the arrival of the craft. Some sort of hatch then opened on the craft, and a tall, thin being, about 2 meters in height, exited the object. The entity was wearing a silvery, metallic, one-piece, tight-fitting suit. The suit covered the entity's hands and ears. Like a diver, the face remained exposed, but she could only remember that it was very pale and could not recall any other features. Now that the hatch opened, the witness was able to see inside and saw what appeared to be silvery curtains, apparently made from the same material as the entity's suit. Seconds later, a second entity very similar to the first exited the object and stared directly at Veri and her father. Ignoring them, the two entities and the local Rapa Nui man began talking amongst themselves. Moments later, all three entered the object, which then rose into the air and disappeared into the distance at high speed.
Interesting.
And that one is a Type B encounter, right?
Yeah, when they exit the craft. This is from Miguel Pedrero and Frank Contreras, Spanish researchers. It's interesting. It seems to show that some Earth people, or possibly, who knows, hybrids, are working with them. They obviously they came to pick this guy up, this man, whoever he was.
He was waiting. Yeah, that's so weird.
He voluntarily went into the craft with them. I don't know if he was seen again.
Who
doesn't go
knows?
into specifics.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if we could hear what happened when that guy came back, if he came back.
If he came back, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, we're still in 1950, busy year, and we're going to Italy now. It's a place called Santa Caterina Villahermosa in Sicily, Italy. It was a young guy named a young woman, I believe, Giuseppina Capelli, was traveling by horse buggy with her parents to a nearby farm. Nearing a large meadow, the horse suddenly reared up and stopped, becoming very nervous, snorting and looking around. As her father attempted to calm the animal, her mother yelled out, pointing toward the meadow. There, the witnesses, they saw two small human-like figures moving at very high speed right over the field, giving the impression that they were not touching the ground, maybe gliding over the ground. The small figures had short arms and legs, and they wore a round cap on their heads. They quickly disappeared into the distance. Her father warned her not to talk about what she had seen, and he told her it was the devil's business, as her mother had called them, little witches. This is from a catalog of sightings in Sicily by Antonio Blanco. So this seems to be like some type of elves and sighting or encounter of little people. Doesn't really give too much detail, but it's interesting that they seem to be gliding right above the ground.
Let's go ahead and, yes, everybody raise a glass to JJ. JJ is a friend of ours here in the YouTube community who recently passed. So, drink them if you've got them. JJ. I do want to share with folks this image. Of this next case.
Image of a flying humanoid.
Yeah. And so I will read that one. And first I've got to pull it back over here. Okay. Tombadoro Passatempo, Minas Gerais, Brazil. 1950, time late evening. Close to nightfall, a lone witness was sitting at the veranda of his home when he noticed some movement above a nearby wheat field. As he looked, he suddenly noticed what appeared to be the figure of a flying man, figure complete with wings, that came flying over the field and alighted on the front yard of the witness's house, not too far from his location. Terrified, the witness did not stay around to greet the bizarre figure and ran inside the house. He did not see the flying humanoid depart. There are no other details.
This case was sent to me directly from researcher Antonio Faleiro from Minas Gerais in Brazil.
And Albert, what do you think about the resurgence, if you will, of Mothman and the Mothman kind of entities?
Seems to be a lot of those cases now, especially in the starting the last decade, 2007, 2008, especially around Chicago, Illinois, and different places. A lot of winged creature reports. I don't know why.
It sounds to me like the creature in the last case definitely fit the Mothman kind of property.
But he was more human-like. He was at a human-like face, and
didn't have the big red eyes.
No, he just like the way you would depict an angel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not saying he was an angel, but he looked like it.
A lot of people think they are.
Yeah, true. Or demons.
So this is the graphic for the next case.
Yes, this is a famous case in Argentina. A place called Zona Cuyu near Lago, Argentina, in the province of Santa Cruz, Argentina. On March 18, 1950, the time was 6:30. Wilfredo Arevalo, a rancher, he saw a disc land while a second craft hovered above. He got to within 100 meters from the landed disc, which was giving off a greenish blue vapor, and an intense smell appeared to be of a phosphorescent, glowing metal like aluminum. Above the disc, a large flat part was rotating like a gramophone record. In the center of the disc, there was a cabin. Of very transparent glass, through which he could see four tall, and there.
Albert, can you repeat? Your internet went out again, so we lost your audio.
He was particularly struck by the pallor of their face. They're very pale. I remember the case from the Easter Island. On seeing him, the man shone a searchlight at him. A blue light lit up the craft, and there was an increase of the vapor. Yeah.
Albert, are you still with us? All right. I'll go ahead and repeat Everybody is having internet problems these days, seems like. Wilfredo H. Aravello, a rancher, saw a disc land while a second craft hovered above. That would be intense all by itself. He got 150 meters from the landed disc, saw a disc land with a second, right, I already said that, which was giving off a greenish-blue vapor and an intense smell of burning benzene. This was March 18th, 1950 at 1830 hours. And appeared to be of a phosphorescent metal like aluminum. Above the disc, a large flat part was revolving. And I'm just finishing up that case. Like a gramophone record. In the center, the disc had a cabin of very transparent glass through which he could see 4 tall, well-shaped men dressed in something like cellophane, working at various instruments. He was particularly struck by the pallor of their faces. On seeing him, the men shone a searchlight at him. A blue light lit up in the craft, and there was an increase of the vapor and flames, alternately reddish and greenish, that shot out from the base. The craft then rose with a faint hum, and both machines vanished over the Chilean frontier, leaving bluish trails. Searching the area next day, Aravello and his cowhands found the grass burnt and advised the Argentine Air Force and the Buenos Aires newspaper La Razón. And that's from Donald Hanlon in The Humanoids. Albert, are you back with us? We'll have to kick this one out first before we can let this one in. There we go.
There we go. Can you see me?
Yep.
So you finished the one in Argentina, Santa Cruz,
yes.
Argentina. Very interesting case from Donald Hanlon, The Humanoids.
And tell me a little bit about Hanlon and the Humanoids.
Okay, they were a British researcher, Donald Hanlon. He was the first one that, well, the Lawrensons in Arizona also were interested in humanoids, but Mr. Hanlon and Gordon Creighton, rest in peace, both of them became interested, like I did, in the humanoid facet of the phenomenon. They collected cases of humanoid reports worldwide, and they put those cases in a book called The Humanoids. And I have a copy of that book, which is hard to find now, but that's one of the first books I read that really, piqued my interest in the humanoid phenomenon. And of
it's
course,
a very provocative case.
Interesting case, yeah. The next one, I guess it's my turn there. It's a very weird case. You could say you're funny, but it was investigated by Kenneth Arnold himself.
Really?
And Ted Blocher. Ted Blocher.
I didn't know that he was an investigator.
Yeah, he did. He did a couple investigations. This one here, Ted Blocher. He also was an investigator that focused on the humanoid phenomenon.
Interesting.
But this case is like a contactee case, but interesting nonetheless. It occurred March 28, 1950, during the day at a place between Morton and Mineral in the state of Washington. And the main witness was Samuel Eaton Thompson from Centralia, Washington. He was heading home, and on the way he drove through a forested area and decided to stop. He was like an amateur explorer, so he couldn't resist the temptation to follow an old logging trail to see where it led. He backed his car along the trail, got out, and proceeded on foot. A few minutes later, he came upon a sight that he will later describe as something unheard of. The something unheard of was a big globe-shaped craft that hovered just above a clearing in the trees. After all, that was a classic flying saucer, especially with the rim that surrounded the object's midsection. And plenty of people have reported that type of craft. Thompson was naturally surprised to see it, but he was more startled to see people. And these people, according to Thompson, were naked, nude. Yeah, they were playing on the steps that led from the door in the side of the ship to the ground. They were about the size of an average child. According to Eaton, they were beautiful. They had dark tans and lovely dark blonde hair that came all the way to their waist. Thompson wasn't frightened. He was just excited. He didn't know what to do. He approached the ship, and when he got to within 50 feet, he began to feel heat emanating from it. Thompson will learn later that this heat was not only was used for the propulsion of the craft, but also kept its occupants alive. The heat felt like rays from the sun, which accounted for the children's tan skin. Thompson thought that. When he got to the bottom of the steps, adults, unclothed, tan, beautiful men and women, came to the door and stood on the steps watching him as if they were frightened of him. When he assured them he meant no harm, they invited him into the ship, where Thompson will spend most of the next 40 hours in the ship. They told him to take off his shoes and socks before walking up the steps. According to Eaton, they told him they were from Venus. Okay, this is 2 years before the Adamski supposed contact.
Mm-hmm.
They spoke an uneducated kind of English. They were oddly ignorant, yet they seemed to be happiest and cheerful people that you ever met, according to Thompson. Even the children were gentle in their play, no roughness or tumbling and stuff like that, and did not have to be told how to behave or think. The entities, the Venusians, were totally benevolent. Their idea not to destroy people, Thompson said, it was to make good at will among people. According to Thompson, yet Earth people frightened them because on several occasions earthly aircraft had shot down their spaceships. They claimed to have been shot down. The Earth people problem stemmed from the fact that they were born under different planet signs, whereas all the Venusians are born under the sign of Venus. The peace-loving people who live on the other worlds in the solar system are also born under the sign of the planet they inhabit. According to Thompson,
so that means we're all actually on the zodiac. We're Earth sign.
Yeah, we're warlike, according to them.
We're Gaia sign.
The Venusians, according to Thompson, the Venusians lived long lives because they ate right. They didn't eat meat.
Eschewing meat?
Yeah. They only ate like apples, artichokes, and nuts, stuff like that. It's
grown in Minnesota and them places.
According to it, that's what he said. Samuel Eaton Thompson. Thompson thought the Venusians are something like animals, at least in the sense that everything they do is instinctual. They knew remarkably little even about themselves. So I don't know. They do not know how to build their ships, which serve as their dwelling places even when they are at home in Venus, and only have a vague idea of how they are powered.
Weird.
As Thompson understood, the propulsion has something to do with streams of hot air shooting through jets. The heat cast off by this poorly defined process also heats the interior of the ship, which is at an 80-degree temperature the whole time. Each ship has 4 sets of control, which of little more than levers to make the craft ascend, descend, accelerate, or decelerate. They are so simple that anybody can operate them, according to Thompson. They have no sense of time. In fact, the whole concept of time is foreign to them. Yet, according to Thompson, they're really smarter than we think that we are. They are. They got a gift that is so much greater than ours that there is no comparison, according to Thompson. The Venusians told Thompson they hoped to contact other Earth people one at a time. Through this slow process, they eventually will establish peace on this planet. I guess they haven't been able to do that yet.
No, not so far.
Their efforts will culminate in Christ's return in AD 10,000. That's a long way from now. According to Thompson, there were several rooms inside the spaceship. These rooms, most of them brightly illuminated as is by sunlight, were square in shape. Those in the lower part of the craft were transparent all around the ship, enabling the viewer to see out in any direction. One room served as a place to shower. As Thompson put it, you just walk into this room and it rains in there just the same as it rains outdoors. And according to Thompson, he was told that they draw them in the moisture from the air, and that's where you'll get your bath. And then in the room where they keep the fruit and stuff like that, it's a cool room, a certain temperature. In another room where they slept, it's rather dark but not totally dark. You just go in there and you can lie down on the seats or on the floor anywhere and go to sleep. Thompson slept overnight on one of these seats in the spaceship bedroom. Thompson and the Venusians parted company on March 30th, Thursday, and 2 days later, after he had come up on their ship in the clearing, 2 days later, so he stayed there for 2 days. They told him he could contact them anytime he wanted to, but he had to keep certain information to himself. And like I said, this case is very little known case. Kenneth Arnold talked to Mr. Thompson, and it's kind of weird that the entities were naked and they were so simple. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the Time Machine. Remember when they came? What's the name of the first Time Machine movie was better. He came upon thousands of years in the future where the Earth people were like that. They were simple.
The Eloi and the Morlocks.
There you go.
Yeah. The Morlocks lived underground and the Eloi lived on the surface, and they were provided for by, I think, some kind of computer, but they were very simple-minded and just wandered around and sort of encountered each other, and I don't even know if they spoke.
Barely, yeah. All right. This is a weird case. Take it or leave it.
This is a very weird case, Albert.
You never heard of it? Samuel E. Thompson.
But, you know, I'm a little suspicious because Kenneth Arnold is involved. B, anytime they claim to be Venusians, you know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Kind of strange.
Maybe they
this is, you know, right in, like you were saying, right in between that contactee era and the modern UFO era.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about Christ returning, I wonder how much of that is just witness pollution. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of it could be. Yeah.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Creatures that didn't know how their own craft worked or who built them.
Yeah, just like the
I'm not
Eloi.
buying it. Yeah, definitely Eloi type.
Yeah.
Although Ted Blocher worked on that case, that's interesting.
Yeah, he did. He has some interesting cases. I think he's
Okay,
still
so
alive.
this
He's
one
retired. Yeah.
is near Eureka, California, 1951, time 10 a.m. Near the Eel River above Eureka, at the end of a meadow near the river's edge, a family and the main witness were fishing on the river. They had camped in the vicinity for about 2 weeks and had poor luck when it came to fishing. The main witness used to go for a short walk before breakfast because there was a very pretty meadow about a mile or two from their camp, and she used to love to see the mist rise off the grass. She was only about 10 years old at the time, and the world of nature was something which both fascinated and enthralled her. She entered the meadow and proceeded to cross it in order to reach a small knoll at the other side. When she approached the foot of the knoll, she heard a sound. It was the sound of someone walking, and she thought perhaps her little brother had followed her and was going to jump out and try to scare her. She hollered, "All right, I know you're there." Needless to say, it was not her brother that appeared. Instead, it was a creature that she will never forget as long as she lives. The creature stepped out of the bushes, and she froze like a statue. He, or it, was about 7.5 or 8 feet tall. He was covered with brown stuff that looked more like a soft down than fur. He had small eyes set close together and had a red look about them. His nose was very large and flat against his face. Sound familiar, anybody? He had a large mouth with the strangest looking fangs she had ever seen. He made a horrible growling sound that she doesn't think it could imitate by any living thing. She ran as fast as she could. She reached camp, winded, and stayed scared all the while that they were there. The creature's form was that of a human, and he had hands and feet of enormous size, but very human-looking. However, there was one thing that was strangest and most frightening of all. He had on clothes. They were tattered and torn, and barely covered him, but they were still there. Now, one thing, Albert, that comes to mind is the wild man cases that were reported in the early newspapers. Not too long ago, I had Joshua Cutchin on the show, and he was talking about his 2 books, Where the Footprints End, with Timothy Renner. And these kind of creature encounters happen a lot, even today. But back in the day, there were lots of reports of very tall creatures that resembled what we think of as Sasquatch, but wearing some clothes, which is just bizarre.
Tattered clothing, or a little, something covering their parts. I know reports of some of them carrying clubs too, or but,
yeah, it's like they're a caveman.
But it reminds me of maybe just like a werewolf. Just like maybe the person turned into morph into the werewolf, and that's why his clothes were tattered. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
All right.
Okay.
Next case.
The next case, I knew the witness personally. He was,
oh wow.
He was working for the U.S. government, maybe in the intelligence community, and he was stationed in Georgetown, Guyana. You don't hear too many cases from there, but he was there.
Is this the correct image for this case?
No, that's the next case. That's another.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a weird case. Okay, this person, his first name was Denver, along with his father. I put her, but his father, his young son, and several locals were strolling along the local seawall, alongside the ocean, when they all saw a bright light approaching from the ocean. As they came closer, they could see it was a saucer-shaped craft with multicolored lights and windows. The main witness, Denver, and son remained watching as most of the other people fled in panic. The object landed nearby on a grassy area near the seawall. Inside the windows, the witness was able to see several dark, man-shaped figures. Apparently, he didn't see any heads or arms were visible. A few moments later, the object rose straight up and then flew inland at very high speed. They investigated later, and they found a large circular burnt area that was found in the grass where the object had landed. He told me that when I spoke to him, that he never forgotten the incident, and it was his father that was stationed there. But I talked to him in person.
It was his father that was the actual witness?
Him and his father.
Uh-huh.
His father was with him, and his son. So it must have been his elderly father and his son and several other people. Yeah, there were several witnesses. I got to correct that.
The dark sort of man-shaped creatures that he couldn't see the arms or legs of are kind of creeping me out. Okay, so this case comes from Manila in the Philippines on May 10th of 1951 in the evening. On a sultry May evening, the Manila police patrols were expecting trouble. I don't know why they were expecting trouble. There was the smell of it in the air, and it was a safe prediction as the storm warning made by the distant rumble of the approaching thunderstorm. A patrol car received a message of a crowd gathering outside of the waterfront bars. The car skidded to a stop as a terrified scream rang out. Forcing their way through the watching crowd, the officers saw a girl rolling about on the ground. She kept shouting, "Keep it away from me! Keep it away! Oh, please won't someone help me? I can't stand the pain." But no one around her could see anything near the girl. The shocked police officers clearly saw teeth marks appearing on the girl's arms and neck. As nobody else moved to help her, the officers sprang forward and carried the frantically struggling girl to the car, manacled her, and drove at top speed to the police station. All the way during the trip,
the image of the girl there. That's the image on it. Yeah.
All the way during the trip, the girl fought against the manacles, screaming and sobbing. At the police headquarters, the police doctor suspected that the girl, Clarita Villanueva, had been taking drugs or drinking. Another doctor thought she was having an epileptic seizure. She was then taken to a cell, ignoring her pleas not to leave her alone. A few minutes later, she started screaming uncontrollably, and this time the two police officers came running. The distraught girl moaned to them, "The thing is coming at me. It's coming through the cell door." Wow, that's scary. She described the unseen entity as resembling a man with large bulging eyes and wearing a cape over his shoulders, and it floated in midair. The police officers went inside the cell but still could see nothing. As they watched, stunned, more and more bite marks began appearing on the girl's arms. They summoned the doctor and the chief of police. The doctor determined that the bite marks were not self-inflicted. Eventually, the exhausted girl fell asleep, and in the morning she was being led away. She began screaming that the thing was back. She eventually collapsed. Later, while being taken away by ambulance, she reported two creatures attacking her this time, both with large, staring eyes. Witnesses watched teeth marks forming on the girl's neck and arms. They eventually reached the hospital where the attacks ceased. She was guarded 24 hours a day for several days. She was eventually released. Clarita described one of the beings as a big, black, hairy, human-like, very tall, with two sharp canine teeth and a long beard like a Hindu. Its feet were 3 times the size of normal human feet. The second entity was about 3 feet tall, also very black, hairy, and ugly.
Yeah, this case was Frank Edwards. You know Frank Edwards. He was one of the
Sure, of course. The first UFO book I ever had was by Frank Edwards.
Frank Edwards, me too.
Flying Saucer Serious Business.
Yeah, I mean this case was very well known back then when he put out the book.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's
I
don't know what to make of that either.
Demonic entities or interdimensional
Something
predators.
extra dimensional, yeah.
But they were not that friendly for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we go to the next one. There's an image for the next one. Interesting image. Talking about long white beards. You'll hear this one here. This happened in this little town of Bucelel in the Alps Maritimes, France. Summer 1951. Yeah, that one. Yeah. The summer of 1951, about 9 p.m. It was still daylight. The witness, they only said her name was Mrs. X, 40 years old, her husband 49, and a police officer friend, and Mr. Z, 50 years old, were walking down the Rue des Martyrs to a little square where a theatrical company was giving out an outdoor play. Suddenly above the square, the three see approximately 60 meters a transparent ovoid, oval-shaped object, which was slightly tilted in their direction, motionless at 7 meters above the ground. The audience at the play had their backs turned to the craft, and nobody seemed to have noticed it. The puzzled witnesses thought at first that it was some kind of particular display, and advanced quietly in the direction of the weird object. And they were then able to observe a pilot inside the object, dressed in a light-colored one-piece suit, who seemed fragile and old in appearance, with a long white beard, with nothing on his head, but otherwise he was normal looking. This character was leaning forward, and the witness swore that he was extremely interested on the ongoing play the theatrical company was doing. A second figure, definitely less visible, was at his side. At this point of the observation, Mrs. X was less than 15 meters away from the object, and estimated that it was between 4 to 5 meters long. No description of the apparatus interior could be provided by the three amazed witnesses. The witnesses exchanged initial comments and then called to the audience to draw their attention to the incredible vision. And then the object departed very quickly, emitting a gentle whistling sound, and disappeared behind a building in the direction northeast. The rest of the public apparently did not see the object and were apparently angered at the distraction. The observation had lasted about 30 seconds. This is from French researchers Anne-Marie and Philip Maissa, Terry Laplatte, and Eric Sorcher. Again, we see some kind of entity with a long white beard, which is strange.
They seem to be popping up.
Object. Yeah. No means of propulsion could be seen, just a hovering egg-shaped object, transparent. Strange.
Yeah. All right, let's share the screen on this one. If I can learn how this technology works. Jesus, Gil, come on. All right. This is a familiar looking creature.
Entity, yeah.
So this is from San Fernando, Formosa, Argentina, 1952, sometime in the afternoon. Juan Luis Perea, 14, was returning to his farm on his horse when suddenly a short blonde-haired man-like figure came out from the side of the dirt road and stopped in front of the horse, attempting to grab the reins. This frightened the horse, who took off through another path. However, the short blonde-haired figure followed Perea all the way to his farm. Once there, it disappeared. Perea reported seeing the short creature once more while he played outside in the sand. He described it as noticeably short, blonde-haired, and completely nude.
Another nude creature. Entity.
More nude creatures. Yes.
Yeah, this is in South America. They're called duendes or goblins or little people. There's a lot of those reports from there.
In this one, we have another image.
There you go. Ooh, there you go.
And this one is equally scary. I'll go ahead and share that.
Another flying humanoid, but more of a Mothman.
A little
type.
more reptilian.
Yeah. This happened in 1952 at night at a place at a military base in Japan called Camp Okubu near Kyoto, Japan. The witness was Air Force Private Sinclair Taylor. He was on guard duty. The moon was full and he could make out the figure of the guard private Anthony Groves on the next post, which was over 100 yards away. He had stopped to light a cigarette when he heard a loud flapping noise. He looked up toward the direction of the noise, and what he saw gave him cold chills. Coming down out of the moonlit sky was a bird, or a bird-type creature larger than any bird he had ever seen. In panic, he swung his carbine from his shoulder and pulling off the safety, he put a round in the chamber. The bird, or thing, came closer. It happened so suddenly that he really didn't have a time to be inquisitive as to what it was. He only acted as fast as he had been trained to do. He threw the weapon to his shoulder, and as he was about to fire, the thing seemed to stop and hover in the air, as a bird will do when he's undecided where to alight. He felt his eyes on him. He made out his form, but more clearly now had started slowly to descend again at the body of a man. It was well over 7 feet from head to feet, and his wing spread was almost equal to his height. Very large. He started to fire and emptied his carbine where the thing hit the ground. But when he looked up to see if his bullets had found home, there was nothing there. The sergeant of the guard came running over and asked him what the trouble was. When he told him what he had seen, he was not skeptical as Sinclair had thought he would be. In fact, he never even smiled. He looked around, and when he came back, he told Sinclair that maybe he was pulling his leg, but he doubted because a year before another guard had claimed to have seen the same thing. This was from Janet and Colin Board, Unexplained Mysteries of the 20th Century, and the witness also wrote a letter to Fate magazine about the incident.
Is that where you found it?
I found it first with Colin Board and Janet Colin Board, the Fate magazine article. I don't know if I have it, but I have read it before.
Well, this particular period of time seems to have quite a few images with it. This one is no different, so we'll go ahead and show that one. And this one is from Lomo de Balena, Peru, February or March 1952, 1630 hours. Driving northwards to Lima on the Pan American Highway, CAV, saw Lomo de Balena, a grayish, shining, metallic disc, hovering a few feet over the desert. He stopped and ran toward it. An opening appeared, and there emerged three mummy-like beings about 5 feet tall, with joined legs and a single large foot. That right away reminds me of the Calvin Parker, Charles Hickson creatures.
Yeah.
They wore no clothing but had towel-like skin. They asked in English whether they were in North America. On being told that it was South America, the voice switched to Spanish. They asked CAV to take them to his chief and said they came from another star and concerned about atomic energy dangers. They said they were asexual and reproduced by fission. During the conversation, one actually did so. They invited him into the craft, which was transparent and contained no machinery, and took him on a flight down the coast. CAV repeated the story under hypnosis.
He also added that they didn't have any faces that he could see, but another case of, I don't know, this is weird. I didn't mean to do this, but another apparently naked aliens inside a...
Albert, what are you doing? Bringing naked aliens onto my show.
No. And the craft inside, weird. This is a weird case. It's been around for a while. It's been reported.
It does remind me a lot of the creatures that were not the woman that was in control, the female, or the way that Calvin Parker put it, a female, but the creatures that she commanded that glided out of
the craft.
Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson have the same joined legs. They had, the spikes coming out of their head, and it sounds. What was this? 1952?
Yeah, 1952.
And the Hickson abduction was in 73.
73, yeah.
Huh. Okay.
The next case, there's no image for the next case, but it's from Cuba. We don't hear too many cases from there, but there has been a lot there.
From Cuba.
Cuba, yeah. A place called...
Cuba Libre.
Cuba Libre. That's a drink. There you go.
It's one of my favorite drinks.
It was on March 3rd, 1952, about 11 a.m., near a place called Camajuaní in Santa Clara, Cuba.
Boy, Albert, I'm glad that you pronounced this one instead of me.
Yeah, I am from Santa Clara. I know where Camajuaní is. It's near
really?
Santa Clara. The witness was a man named Juan Gonzalez. He was on his way to visit his girlfriend. And
to drink wine and smoke. No, I'm just kidding.
He wasn't naked though.
Not yet.
When suddenly he was when suddenly he was covered in a bright light that seemed to pull him up into the sky. He tried to resist, but he kept rising up into the sky, into the air. All he could see above him was a very bright light, nothing else. Moments later, he found himself in a very large and clean room, which was lit up by a bright blue lights. Gonzalez remained suspended in midair, so he was like floating in midair. He then heard a door shut behind him and assumed it was the same one he used to enter the room. Very afraid, he thought he was going to die. Suddenly, his clothing and shoes were suddenly removed. There you go. By unseen hands.
Now he's naked.
Ashamed of being totally naked, he tried to... I swear to God, I didn't do this on purpose. He tried to cover himself. But could not move his
1950 to 1954 is just that swinging time,
So he tried to cover himself with his hands. He then heard some voices that seemed to come from, to approach his location, but he couldn't see anything. Only bright blue flashes. He then fell asleep and later woke up in the same location where he had been originally picked up. He was now lying on the grass and was fully clothed, thank God, including shoes. He then walked to a nearby house and was approached by numerous locals screaming, "He's back, he's back." Confused, he was stunned, and when they told him that he had been missing for almost a month. The day was already April 3rd. However, no one believed Gonzalez when he told them what had happened to him. And
My goodness.
we're talking
That
1952.
that breaks the record of 5 days by Travis Walton, doesn't it?
Well, there's a French guy that he said he was abducted. He was kept in a base for a year.
No kidding.
Yeah, this is 1968, 69. But anyway, this is a case from Cuba that shows an abduction, and unfortunately, back then, this guy he told his story years later, but he wasn't hypnotically regressed or anything like that. I wish
He remembered all of this consciously.
Yeah, but only that's it.
That's enough. Okay. This case is in Ukraine. Exact location unknown. Date summer 1952. Time night. A man named Ivan Servejich K., a young boy at the time, was spending the night at a gypsy encampment when suddenly a strong wind arose, which frightened the horses, causing them to scatter into different directions, their owners running after them. Ivan was left sitting toward the bonfire, accompanied by an elderly gypsy woman. Suddenly, there was a bright flash of light from the nearby glade in the forest. The light was compact in nature, and it rose above the ground like a dome. 3 strange entities then walked out of the light. They were human-like, but with huge, featureless heads. Maybe they were wearing some type of helmet with a transparent frontal section, but the witness could not be sure. The humanoids wore tight-fitting outfits. One of the humanoids was about 2 meters in height, the second shorter, and the third shorter yet, about 1 meter 70 centimeters in height. The humanoids approached the fire and sat around it, exchanging words among themselves using strange hissing sounds. The aged gypsy woman watched the aliens and took a clump of dust from her knapsack and threw it into the fire. The fire then began to crack loudly. One alien attempted to approach the fire, but the woman threw more dust in, causing the fire to sparkle loudly. Surprisingly, this seemed to frighten the humanoids. During the next 15 minutes, the humanoids and both witnesses sat across each other by the bonfire, staring at each other through the fire. Finally, the entities walked back to the lighted dome, and soon the strong wind rose again, this time obviously emanating from the dome. Soon a lighted globe-like shaped object zoomed up from the meadow and vanished. I gotta tell you, Albert, this week you are scaring me. There are some really scary encounters in this one.
I wonder what the gypsy woman knew. Maybe counted them before. Who knows?
I don't know, but it's these creatures and the sightings are a lot more scary than normal. For this one, let's go ahead and get that image there.
Everybody probably knows about this one. July 28, 1952. This is another contactee guy. Mormon Mesa in Nevada, about 4 a.m. in the morning.
Mormon Mesa, Nevada. That's how Jack Nicholson would say it.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Well, this guy's name was Truman Bethurum. I'm sure you heard of him.
I haven't.
You haven't? Well, he
No.
claimed several encounters with people from the planet.
Oh, he's a repeater, huh?
A repeater, yeah. He had finished his work and decided to visit a nearby hilltop because he heard the ocean once covered it and left deposits of seashells. When he parked his car, he used a flashlight to hunt for the seashells. He had no success during an hour or so of searching, so he turned to his truck and slept for a while. Suddenly a mumbling around the truck awakened him. The mumbling was unintelligible. Bethurum looked out the window and saw 8 to 10 small men, all about 4 feet and 8 inches in height to 5 feet. They were not dwarfed by fully developed men, said Bethurum. The strange men made no effort to molest him. Bethurum said he was afraid to attempt a getaway. He was still in the truck cab. One man spoke to him in a foreign tongue. Bethurum shook his head, indicating he could not understand. Then the small man said, "You name it." It was perfect English, recalled Bethurum, who answered, "My God, you can speak English too." And they answered, "We have no trouble with any language," replied the man. Bethurum then climbed out of the truck and stopped, awe-stricken. He saw a flying saucer parked about 75 yards away from his truck. It looked like burnished stainless steel. Bethurum shook hands with all the friendly men and asked if their captain was around. The spokesman of the group volunteered to escort Bethurum to the captain and led him toward the parked spaceship. Meanwhile, Bethurum looked around and saw the short man were Latin types, that is, with complexion something like Italians, he thought. All were neatly dressed in uniforms, similar to those worn by Greyhound bus drivers. Okay. All had coal black hair and dark eyes. They had beautiful skin which contained no wrinkles or blemishes. The spokesman for the group told Bethurum took hold of Bethurum's elbow. And while holding the arm gently, said Bethurum, "The man seemed to have me in his power." A 3-foot metal rim with beveled edges surrounded the saucer-like ship. The rim, said Bethurum, was about 2 feet thick. The ship had no rudder or stack. They entered the ship through the...
Albert, we're having a little bit of problem with your internet. Let me back up a little bit and read from some of the stuff that we weren't able to hear because of your internet going in and out. Bethurum described it as being made of some type of metal. He learned that it measured 300 feet in diameter and was 6 yards deep in the center. A 3-foot metal rim with beveled edges surrounded the saucer-like ship. The rim, said Bethurum, was about 2 feet thick. The ship had no rudder or stacks. They entered the ship through a large, wide door that Bethurum estimated was 4.5 feet wide and about 10 to 12 feet long. It was located atop the ship close to the metal rim around the edge. Inside, he met the woman captain, Ara Raines. He described her as having a slender Latin-type face. She wore a radiant red skirt, black velvet short-sleeved blouse, and a black beret with red trim. He went into her lounge and talked. The woman captain said she was from the planet Clarion. Oh, yes, okay, Clarion. I do remember this. Which meant that it could not be seen from Earth, and even with progressive magnification, which Bethurum interpreted as meaning by telescope. She also said the planet was not known by people on Earth by another name, such as Mars. About Mars, she said it was peopled and contained atmosphere, industry, and homes. She and the people on Mars did not have to have any special breathing apparatus. And evidently, Truman Bethurum wrote a book aboard a flying saucer, which is the source for this. And Albert, is what is the type of case here. Are you still with us? I agree, Canadian Spider-Man. There is something spooky and ethereal about her face. Evidently, she looked like a she, I guess. Looks like a she to me. But with maybe slightly bigger eyes. Maybe. I don't know. It's difficult to say, not knowing the artist, not knowing any more about the case. Albert, are you with us? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and kick Albert from the studio and hope he comes back. And I will read the next one. And this one is in Seat Pleasant, Maryland, August 1952, time 21:30. At about 9:30 p.m. on a hot summer evening, Mrs. Knight was in her kitchen when she heard a peculiar buzzing noise, apparently against the screen of the kitchen window. This noise was repeated several times, and thinking it was a large insect, she went to the window and looked out. She saw a bright red object descending rapidly at a 45-degree angle to her, approximately half a city block away and about 300 feet above the ground. The UFO appeared to Mrs. Knight to resemble the wingless fuselage of a plane and was dull silver in color. Something similar to smoke was coming from the rear. The side of the object facing Mrs. Knight was lined with a number of square windows through which brilliant yellow light was shining. On top and to the front of the object, to her left, was a small red light, extended somewhat above the body. On the underside of the UFO was an undercarriage similar to the gondola of a dirigible. This also contained a row of smaller square windows and was brilliantly aglow inside with a yellow light. Mrs. Knight thought she observed what appeared to be rows of seats, similar to theater seats, in this lower portion. Through the upper window she was able to see what appeared to be a row of cabinets with slanted tops. There was a man in the front, Mrs. Knight wrote in her report to NICAP. I don't remember what NICAP stands for at the moment.
Yeah, it used to be a
looking
UFO.
straight. Go ahead.
Used to be a UFO organization or group.
Yes,
connected
National something.
Investigator, but they're connected to CUFOS.
Yeah. But they're not still around, are they?
No, they're not.
Yeah, okay. So in her report to NICAP, National Investigations something on Aerial Phenomena Committee? National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena? Looking straight ahead toward the front to her left. I couldn't understand what he was looking at so intently and not moving either. I expected to see a lot of instruments or dials similar to instrument panels on airplanes, but there were none that I could see. She said that the bright yellow glow of the object made everything inside look yellow, even the man. The occupant wore a kind of helmet, and around his arm and the side of the helmet next to his face, there seemed to be a shadow or a dark line. After watching for a minute or so, Mrs. Knight left the window to phone the newspaper, but she was unable to get an answer. When she returned to the window, the object was still there, but the man had disappeared, and the undercarriage was no longer visible. I thought maybe it had moved up into the fuselage because not even an outline of the car was visible, but it should have been because the street light would have shown it. At that point, the lights in the object were abruptly extinguished, and the UFO turned from a dull silver color to a glowing red, like the door of an old pot-bellied stove. It also began to rock toward and away from the witness and gave the appearance of being wavy, like water running over a rock or like heat waves coming out of an electric toaster. She then began calling for someone else in the house to come and see the object, but while she was looking for her sister, the object departed. Altogether, the incident had lasted approximately 3 minutes, at least 2 minutes of which Mrs. Knight had seen the object in clear view. And that makes that a type what?
Type A.
Type A, aboard a flying saucer.
Yeah, occupant seen under. Did you display the image? Right on.
No, I am now.
That's the image of the object and the occupant. The report was investigated by NICAP.
National Investigations Committee for Aerial Phenomena. I'm pretty close.
And I apologize for my internet. I don't know what's wrong with it tonight, but it wasn't like this.
You know, I'll tell you what. The last 3 people I've interviewed have had the exact same issue.
Really?
Yep. It got to the point where we just had to dam the internet and use the phone and put the phone right up against the mic, which isn't desirable, but it's better than nothing, I guess. This one doesn't want to to move, but it is a good image, so let's make sure we get to share it. Just making finishing touches here. All right, and we will share that.
There you go.
So there's the red light, the bright yellow light through the windows, the smoke in the rear, the figure facing forward, the gondola with the windows, UFO seen by Mrs. Knight, inset sketch of occupant, looks vaguely Egyptian.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a gray for sure.
No.
No. All right. Interesting. Type A case.
Right.
You didn't hear too many of those nowadays. The next one, we're going to go back to the Ukraine. A place called Karadag Mountain area in the Crimea, Ukraine. Now the USSR again, but September 1952. The time is not specified. And this is another weird one. The witness was Valentina Sosulia, a local resident was collecting firewood in the area of Lagushacha Bay, they call it Frog Bay, at the foot of the massive and rocky Karadag, an ancient dormant volcano. That's what it is. Suddenly, not far from the water, she saw movement, which at first she mistook as a tree. Suddenly, this something began moving and unrolling, according to her. A creature then stood up on his hind legs and began making hissing sounds. The bizarre creature resembled a huge reptile with the body of a dragon, green-brown in color. His body was covered with clearly visible corneous plates, scales. His paws had large claws, and the head resembled the head of a snake. The eyes were green in color. The estimated length of his body was said to have been about 8 meters. That's huge. Valentina looked into the eyes of the monster and was seized by a sudden panic. I would have been too, which caused her to retreat away from the creature's presence. The creature then descended on all fours of his paws, turned around and began walking towards the shore, eventually vanishing under the water. The frightened witness ran to the hamlet of Coquetel, and while on the road she met 2 frontier guards and warned them not to go near the cape. Later, several locals found huge paw-like tracks on the sand that disappeared into the water's edge. This was sent to me by Mr. Anton Amfilov from Crimea. It sounds more like some kind of cryptid, some kind of weird cryptid animal. But I include those in my catalog also, my database.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a scary one, that's for sure.
There's a lot of scary ones tonight.
Huge reptilian.
So it turns out that NICAP stands for the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. And it has a logo not dissimilar from NASA. It has the exact same chevron, but instead of NASA, it says NICAP, and on the top there's a flying saucer, and there's a dotted line going down to what looks like a man. So it's sort of a stick figure abduction, if you will. But you don't hear that much about them lately.
No, only if you know a lot about UFO history, you know who they are, but if not...
Albert, we are getting some requests to go a little bit longer. Are you okay to go for an extra half hour, or should we wrap up at a regular time?
Oh, we could try going an extra half hour. That's fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. If I get
Thank
tired,
you.
I gotta do something, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Okay, the next
Okay.
one, go ahead. The next one you take it is a well-known case from 1952.
Location, Cara Dag
No,
Mountain
no.
area.
No, that's the one I did. Is the next,
Oh,
next
okay.
one after that.
This one is, oh, yeah, the Flatwoods Monster. Flatwoods, West Virginia. This one is very well known. Let me copy and paste this in case people aren't familiar. This is a very important case to know about. And, of course, famously investigated by Frank Ficino Jr.
And Gray Barker and Ivan T. Sanderson, actually.
There you go. So we will share that.
You know, there was more than one case there. There were several cases in near and around Flatwoods.
The common wisdom about 1952, this case, and many others, according to Frank Ficino, who investigated this case very thoroughly, was that over the eastern seaboard there were several UFOs, or one big UFO that split into several and went all over the eastern seaboard. And these were each collectively, individually investigated. And, we'll tell you about this one. This one's unusual and a little scary. September 12, 1952, 1940 hours. On this date, sightings occurred over a large portion of the eastern United States. I guess I could have just read that instead of improvising it. Blazing objects were seen hurtling through the skies, and many witnesses thought they were airplanes crashing in flames. In Flatwoods, a group of 10 boys were playing in a schoolyard, enjoying the Indian summer evening. They ranged in age from 10 years to 14. The ages of 3 of them at the time are not known. They were young, though. They saw one of these fireballs soar overhead with flames trailing behind it before it came down at a nearby farm owned by, at the time, a man named Bailey Fisher. The boys ran to investigate. They passed the home of 2 of the boys, who were brothers, Edison May and Freddie May. Their excitement about a landed flying saucer caused their mother, Kathleen May, to join the hunt which is unusual, as well as the 18-year-old Eugene Lemon, who brought his dog. 5 of the boys decided to go home. The other 5, plus the 2 adults, went on to the crash site. By then it was about 1940 and getting dark, so they took flashlights. They found an object crashed into the earth and sticking out. It appeared to be pulsing in brightness. A strange sound like a whining or hissing filled the air. There was a violet hue to the air. After their arrival, a mysterious fog-like mist began to blanket the area. It had a nauseating metallic smell and irradiated their throats and lungs. The dog became agitated, began barking violently, and took off. Smart dog. It was later found back in town where it had vomited on a house veranda. It died soon thereafter. Back at the crash site, the boys and the adults had yet to realize that the object had actually landed twice, first on the hilltop and then in the valley, and that something living had emerged from it. When they saw it, they at first thought that an animal was perched in a nearby tree looking at them. Kathleen May shined her flashlight at it, and the entire group got a horrible shock. Instead of an animal, they saw a 12-foot-tall figure with glowing eyes standing next to the tree. As soon as the flashlight beam hit it, the eyes shot out brilliant beams of light that illuminated the entire fog-filled area. The creature seemed to be more of a machine, a metallic casing or suit, or perhaps a creature inside a suit. It was dark in color, but seemed green to some of the witnesses, perhaps because the metallic-like surface reflected the green of the surrounding trees and bushes. It also glowed with light. The middle torso seemed like a cylinder, and the lower torso fanned out like a metallic apron of sorts. Where one might expect arms, there were only 2 short antenna-like things sticking straight out. Its head was round and surrounded by a stiff cowl or helmet shaped like an ace of spades. The round eyes looked like portholes. It had no feet, but levitated about a foot off the ground and maneuvered around in this manner. The creature glided close to Kathleen May, who felt a warm mist around it. Without warning, it squirted an oily substance all over her clothes. There seemed to be no immediate ill effect from the oil, but the nauseating mist continued to burn their throats. The creature left a trail of oil on the ground as it glided. Suddenly, the horror of it hit the witnesses, and all of them, adults and boys, fled back to town as fast as they could run. At the May Lemon home, Kathleen and her boys lived in a house owned by her father, Joe Lemon. Chaos erupted. The Mays and Lemon all had trouble breathing, and the boys were bruised and bleeding, probably from their pell-mell flight. Lemon vomited all night long. Kathleen's eyes were red and teary. Edison and Freddie required medical attention for their damaged throats and mouths. Around 8:15 p.m., Kathleen telephoned the sheriff's office to report their experience, and the sheriff in turn notified the state police. A state trooper telephoned the co-owner, publisher, and photojournalist for the Braxton Democrat, A. Lee Stewart Jr., jumped to join the investigation. He went to the May house and gathered a group of armed men, among them Eugene and Joe Lemon, and went out to the scene, but the monster was gone. Some of its sickening odor lingered behind. Sheriff Robert Carr, meanwhile, took 2 of his dogs to the area, but the dogs ran off howling into the fog. And these are police dogs, folks. He gave up until morning. He found his clothing had been stained by some sort of oil. Stewart also returned to the scene in early daylight and examined some 30-foot-long skid marks left in the grass. While he was studying the marks, his clothes were stained again by the mysterious oil. He found a small, odd piece of silvery metal that looked like dripped solder. He was the first person to break the story in the press. Graybarker, Ivan T. Sanderson, and an assistant to Sanderson went to the crash site at Sugar Creek. There they saw trees ripped down and a big indentation and divots into the earth. They also found pieces of a coiled substance which was sent to the Monsanto Chemical Company for analysis. When the substance was put into water, it uncoiled. It resembled a giant piece of snakeskin, but made out of a harder substance like turtle shell. And the source is Graybarker and Ivan T. Sanderson, who is a legendary researcher. This is a Type C case. Comments. Following the sightings by Kathleen May, the teenagers and the Snitkowski family said 2 men appeared in the Bracken County posing as peddlers. They systematically visited the homes of most of the witnesses, showing little interested in selling pots and pans, but anxious to talk about the sightings for hours. What do you think, Albert? A little Men in Black action?
I think so. And when you read the Snitowski people, that was another family that they were driving near the area and they encountered a creature on the road. But what the May and the kids encounter, there were several sightings of. But of course, the one in Flatwoods is the most the most famous one known.
Is injury from aliens rare or common? Asks Herc 130.
I think it's common. A lot of people they suffer all types of the eyes. And some of them get like rashes, and there's actually been actual injuries. People getting burned. Like
there was the man that had the vent on his chest that had the what was the pattern called?
Like a square grid.
Like a grill.
Yeah, his name was Stephen McCulloch from.
He got up too close to this thing, and it had a grill-shaped vent, and before it took off, it exhausted some hot air out of that, and it was on his chest for months or years.
For a long time.
And then, of course, there is the, to answer Herc 130's question, there is the legendary Cash Landrum case, which is probably not aliens, but probably a back-engineered craft that was in some kind of danger. The propulsion system wasn't working right. They probably had a nuclear propulsion system of some kind in it. All around it was surrounded by planes. It looked like they were trying to help it limp to a Air Force base or something. And the people that got out of the car underneath it as it came over reported radiation burns that are consistent with leaking nuclear fission. So that was probably more earthly than alien, but
using alien technology possibly, or materials,
or back engineered alien technology. It was whatever it was definitely in trouble, and it had a lot of planes around it that were there to help guide it, but it was sputtering and all kinds of problems. But yes, that's a very famous case.
Yeah, a lot of people that they see a UFO on the ground or nearby, they try to approach it as normal people will do, but I don't recommend that. I will stay away because you never know what might happen.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good piece of advice. I know there is a manual. A manual from not fireman, emergency management manual from 1993. And this is back when the government was denying any, flying saucers, or at least whatever they were, represented no threat to the United States. Bullshit. But in this emergency management manual, under U, there was UFO, and it talked about what to do and what not to do if you came upon a UFO.
Right.
And one of the pieces of advice was to stay the hell away from it.
Yeah, do not approach it,
But
do not touch it.
also to form a cordon, not let, regular people in if you had, military people with you, etc.
All right, let's, after this great case, we're going to move on. 1953. This is from South Africa. There's a lot of cases from there. A place called near East Dryfontein Mines, the mine area. The witness was a young man at the time. Remember seeing an object land on the farm. According to the witness, the object was metallic and shaped like two shells stuck together. It was about 10 meters in diameter, and it was standing on 3 metallic legs.
Oh, this is the one in South Africa. Looks like you're frozen again, Albert.
A human-like figure came out of the object and approached the
Can
witness.
you start over?
Apparently,
We lost your
communicating
audio.
with him.
You froze and we lost your audio. Let's try having me read this one, and Albert will return, I'm sure, shortly. Date 1953, time afternoon. The young witness remembered seeing an object land on the farm. The object was metallic and shaped like two shells stuck together. It was about 15 meters in diameter, and it was standing on 3 metallic legs. A human-like figure came out of the object and approached the witness, apparently communicating with him, telling him that he was going to be taken for a ride in the object. The man was described as thin with long black hair, fairly dark skin, a young face, white teeth, and dark angular eyebrows. He accompanied the witness to the house to get a basket of food, and on the way there, one of the dogs apparently attacked and bit the strange visitor. According to the witness, the man made a strange crowing noise resembling that of roosters. He made that noise continuously after the bite. Inside the object, he saw small windows all around, little lights around window frames. It had light brown upholstery on motor car seats. The object took off silently. Apparently, the witness does not recall what happened next. He later found himself in his bed. And this is a Type G entity seen coming out of UFO and direct communication with the witness, which I believe is a classification that Albert came up with. And boy, these cases are strange.
It's unbelievable. The whole internet has been fine the whole day till now.
Yeah, well, this is the time of day when more people are using the internet. So we just got done with the
South Africa,
the case that you were starting, and that was the one in South Africa. So we're ready for the one in Ohio.
Another weird case. You want to take the Ohio one?
Yeah.
Go ahead. That was another.
Or I can take it if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Got it.
Let me wet my whistle here. Okay, so this is from Magador, Ohio. 1953, during the evening, a young man and friend were hunting behind his home, which was on Howe Road, which cut through from 261 to Magador Road, and these two roads then formed a sort of triangular piece of land of many acres, which was mostly swamp, and in which there had been tremendous reporting of strange occurrences, not all of the UFO type. As they walked along, they felt the ground shake, and their first reaction was that perhaps they had come into a quicksand area. But then, as they explained it, the ground became transparent, the kind of transparency you achieve when you hold a flashlight up to your hand and can see the bones in it. They could look back down through a transparent opening about 50 feet in diameter, and far below, they thought about 500 feet or so, they saw lots of machines. They could see lots of people in coveralls working on large round objects, and they saw lots of machines. Then one of the large round objects was sort of rolled over to just below where they were looking down, and the next thing they knew, something hurled past them. As it did, when it was opposite to them, like a large 25-foot thick slice of searchlight beam, it ascended. It took on the appearance of a beautiful silver disc. Then the ground shook again, and they could no longer see through it. Needless to say, they left the area quickly. And Albert, this is a Type X encounter. This is one that you've come up with on your own, right? The Type X?
Yeah.
Interesting report suggesting some type of underground, perhaps interdimensional realm.
I made it type back.
You're roboting out on us again, Albert.
It's because yeah.
We're having a hard time hearing you. Try leaving the studio and coming back. That seems to help. And while we are waiting, I would like to point out that Antiderivative Jill has said to remember to stay to the end of the show for a chance to win a signed copy of Albert's book, Humanoid Encounters 1950 to 1954. You must be present in the chat to be eligible to win. Thank you, Jill. I appreciate that. And yes, the Into the Fringe merch is pretty sweet. I would agree. And you can get your Into the Fringe merch at gillstore.com. Easy to remember. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This one, of course, has a graphic with it. So I will copy that and paste that. Let's make sure that's correctly sized. Wouldn't want you to get the wrong idea. And then we'll try and share that. Okay. So this one is from Botafogo, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, 1953, nighttime. After a month of seeing mysterious lights over the area, the witness, Mr. E, was waiting for a taxi to take him to another district when a man passed him by wearing a hat and a dark-colored raincoat. The man stopped and stared at him very fixedly. He stared back. At this moment, an acquaintance of his, a very fast driver, stopped by and offered him a lift, which he accepted. To his utter surprise, upon reaching his destination and getting out of the car, he was once again confronted by the strange man he had seen only a few minutes earlier. Welcome back, Albert.
My God, thank you.
Staring at him. One evening, sometime later, he suddenly decided he wanted to buy more cigarettes. He took his car and, under some kind of compulsion, found himself driving to the other side of the other side of town to Lublin, which in those days was still quite a deserted district. He felt as though he were obeying an order, but he could not remember anything of what had happened during this time. He slept soundly. The next day he tried to remember what had happened, and sometimes he recalled having seen a person. On another evening sometime after that, he again felt this compulsion to go out, and was met by the same person he had seen on that rainy day. The man approached him. This time he recollects having drawn his Parker fountain pen from his shirt pocket in a familiar gesture to jot something down. In doing so, he immediately felt something warm strike his cheek and burn it. For a long time after this he had a scar on his right cheek. At the same moment, he let go of his pen, which fell to the floor of his car. One of the things he was able to remember is that the stranger did not speak, but he himself understood all that was being said by the man, telepathically. The next day he found his pen, and to his surprise the cap was now pierced by a perfectly round quarter-inch hole. There followed a long period during which Mr. E suffered a dreadful loss of memory. Every time he tried to recollect what had happened, he suffered severe pain in the nape of his neck. He remembers, in one of the subsequent dreams, he felt a feeling of weightlessness. He refused to undergo hypnosis. An interesting detail he reported in his description of the person he encountered was that although his eyes were very large, there were no tear ducts. And this is a type E encounter with an isolated humanoid entity, ductless eyes. This is a very interesting observation. If they walk among us, at least the human-like entities, that could be a giveaway. What do you think, Albert? Crazy looking humanoid for anybody to encounter, for sure. So let's go on to another one. This one is in Vigaglia, Florence, Italy, 1953 at midnight. A certain Serrano Signori, approximately 40 years old, was driving his automobile along a mountain road where he was testing the car's engine as it had previously been giving him some problems. While he steered the car, the headlights projected onto and illuminated a darkened disc landed in a small clearing. Signori stopped the car and got out. He observed two short figures emerging from the disc. They wore spacesuits and helmets. Both beings approached the witness, communicating to him, probably telepathically, albeit the source offered no details about this, the following. We receive and transmit thoughts without the use of any words. We know that you are a being who will not want to do anything malevolent against us. We come from a distant place in order to observe what the people of your world are planning to do. We have powerful tools for annihilating any attack. Speed is a limitless concept to us. We can prove this by transporting you to any location. Signori accepted the challenge and was asked to be transported to a town in the U.S. with which he was already familiar. He went on board the disc, which soon departed from the location silently. Signori stood erect thanks to very subtle powers operating in all directions. Signori had the sensation of being enveloped in foam rubber. He and the beings arrived in the U.S. town in short order, and he recognized it. He asked the beings if he could be left there, so that he could have an opportunity to demonstrate that such an extraterrestrial craft existed. The beings refused, and the saucer returned to the landing site, once again in a brief period of time. The automobile was still there, and its headlights were still on. Signori witnessed the saucer taking off at terrific speed. While gazing at his wristwatch, it was 1 a.m., and thus the experience had lasted about an hour. And the source is Marzirio Verga, When Saucers Came to Earth.
Yes, that's an interesting book. He goes into detail of different Italian cases. All right, I'm back, so let me get the next one for you, which is a very interesting case. This is from Australia. The location is Burra-Goran Valley in New South Wales, Australia. Early 1953, daytime. A camper who happened to penetrate the valley was surprised to come across a large saucer nest in a forest clearing. They found I guess where a saucer had landed. Yet the most startling incident occurred when a lone camper, Brian Doherty, while camped under the stars one night, saw a large dark saucer-shaped craft moving over the surrounding treetops. As he got to his feet, he heard a loud crunching sound as the craft landed on a nearby patch of gum forest above the gully he was camped in. It was a long time before he got back to sleep, and by the time he awoke and went in search for the landing site of the mysterious craft, it had lifted off and flown elsewhere. All that Brian found was an area of trees and shrubbery that had been broken and flattened. That same year, a hiker, Peter Sutter, happened to penetrate an area beneath the cliffs on the south side of the valley one day, which it turned out it was in the vicinity of two saucer nests discovered earlier by campers. From the portion of shrubbery, he saw at the distance several man-sized forms or figures clothed in what he later described as spacesuits. The mysterious beings appeared to be searching on the ground with strange metal devices, apparently collecting soil and rock samples. It was not long before Peter told of his strange encounter to friends, including a UFO group at Fairfield. In turn, the incident was related by a member of the group to a friend in the Liverpool Army camp. This soldier and two others from Ingleburn, while on leave, decided that they would go on a camping trip to investigate the area of Peter Sutter's strange sighting. They set off from Warragamba Township. They attempted to follow the approximate route taken by Peter. It is believed that they penetrated several kilometers inland to the approximate area where the strange figures had been seen. However, it was beyond a certain point that all trace of them was lost. Despite searches, efforts, like the earlier surveillance 2 years before, all traces of these soldiers was lost. Furthermore, all further mention of their disappearance was soon lost in the official wall of silence that descended on the whole matter. So these people went and searched for a site where UFOs supposedly landed, and they were never seen again. This was a case investigated by Rex Gilroy from Australia, Nexus Volume 2, number 17. And there were several disappearances. There were 3 hikers that disappeared, and then these are the people that went looking for the saucer nest. And this area there is very, it's like a high incidence of UFO encounters and other stuff.
And did you read the comments?
Yeah, what happened to the 3 young hikers? Was there a connection between the UFO humanoid sightings and the disappearance? I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people have gone missing when near UFO sightings or landings and stuff like that.
I am going to put Albert Bender's drawing of a man in black.
There you go.
A little bigger here, although it's no great shakes, but it will help demonstrate this encounter.
There you go.
Albert K. Bender was sort of the first person to report Men in Black encounters, and then he wrote a book called The Three Men. Was that it?
Oh, they knew too much about flying saucers? Was that
They knew
one?
too
Or
much
those-
about flying saucers and the Three Men,
Yeah.
and then maybe one more. It feels like there's one more, and then allegedly somebody told him, you need to stay away from this information about flying saucers and Men in Black. And he
quit.
retired from flying saucers and lecturing for 20 years. And then he came back and gave one more lecture, and then he was done. And he led a long life, as I recall.
This is his original drawing of the Men in Black right there.
Yeah, looks like it was on a napkin or something. So this is March 15th, Beware the Ides of March. 1953, 1800 hours. Albert K. Bender was in his den at exactly 6 p.m. He then proceeded to take part in an experiment to contact the UFO aliens as he had planned. He put out the lights in his room and quietly laid down on the bed. After studying the saucers for 11 years, he felt that he would try anything that might help solve the mystery. Saucer investigation had become the biggest part of his life, and he had worked diligently to reach a solution. As soon as he was comfortably situated on the bed, he closed his eyes and began to repeat the message over and over 3 times to be exact. It was after the 3rd attempt that he felt terrible. A cold chill hit his whole body. Then his head began to ache as if several headaches had saved up their anguish and heaped it upon him at one time. A strange odor reached his nostrils, like that of burning sulfur or badly decomposed eggs. Then he partly lost consciousness as the room around him began to fade away. Then small lights seemed to swim through his brain, and they seemed to blink like the flashing lights of an ambulance. He seemed to be floating on a cloud in the middle of space with a strange feeling of weightlessness controlling his entire anatomy. A throbbing pain developed in his temples, and they felt as if they might burst. The parts of his forehead directly over his eyes seemed to be puffed up. He felt cold, very cold, as if he were lying naked on a floating piece of ice in the Antarctic Ocean. He opened his eyes, and to his amazement he seemed to be floating above his bed, but looking down upon it, where he imagined he could see his own body lying there. It was as if his soul had left his body and was hovering above it about 3 feet in midair. He could hear a voice which permeated him, but in some way did not seem to be an audible sound. The voice seemed to come from the room in front of him, which remained pitch dark. "We have been watching you and your activities. Please be advised to discontinue delving into the mysteries of the universe. We will make an appearance if you disobey." He replied in words, though his lips did not move. "Why aren't you friendly to us, as we mean you no harm?" "We have a special assignment," came the reply, "and must not be disturbed by your people." As he tried remonstrating, he was interrupted by another statement. "We are among you and know your every move, so please be advised we are here on your earth." With this, the voice faded away, but he could sense that something was watching him. His body seemed to drop suddenly, and he once again regained his senses and realized that he was on his bed. The room was filled with a yellow mist. Not far from his bed was a shadow resembling that of a man, but as he made a move to rise from the bed, it disappeared. The yellow mist was gradually fading, and his room was becoming normal. He rubbed his eyes in bewilderment. As he sat on the edge of his bed, he grew sick to his stomach. He felt as if he had eaten something spoiled. After a long while, he got up from the bed and walked about the room. He heard a humming noise and noticed that his radio was on. He turned it off as he realized he had not turned it on when he came into the room. And there is an addendum. I don't know if we'll be able to get there or not. Let me check. Often these end up being 404 errors because they are from the era when Albert had a huge online database. Hey, this one worked. What do you know? Let's put it up on the big board. Close Encounters with Mysterious Men in Black.
Yeah, apparently this encounter was more like a psychic encounter for him or something, but he further, later on, he did meet him face to face.
And this article is from an excerpt from his classic book, Flying Saucers and the Three Men, first published in 1963. So remember, viewers, that this is a writer, and it's possible that he used some artistic license in describing the encounter, as some writers are wont to do, to embellish their stories a little bit. What was it? We recently interviewed Tessa K. Dick, Philip K. Dick's last wife, and she said that everything he wrote about was something that actually happened to him. He just embellished it to make it more interesting to readers. So I would caution the audience to keep that in mind.
Use their own judgment, yeah.
All right, you got the next one?
Yeah, go ahead. Since I keep dropping off this. This didn't happen last time we did it.
I know. But I can hear you pretty well, so why don't you try and take this one?
Yeah, there's an image to that.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
This is 1954 in a place called Tenderden, Kent, England. During the morning, the witness was a Mrs. Maureen Gardner, a housewife living with her husband who was serving in the RAF, the Royal Air Force, in this little village. And she had just come out of the lounge and was walking towards the kitchen when she found her way blocked by a man standing on the landing in front of her, preventing her from walking any further. She was not at all frightened or amazed even to see him. She was surprised to see him, but she was not nervous. What surprised her was most of all the height. He was nearly 6 feet tall, and she had to tilt her head back quite. This is a tall woman, Mrs. Gardner. She was nearly 6 feet tall, and she had to tilt her head back quite a bit to look up at the man. So he was over 7 feet tall and was wearing a one-piece, what she calls siren suit, which I guess is like a diving suit, which was metallic blue in color. Although it did not seem to be made out of metal, more of a soft nylon sort of material. It glimmered, but not like Lurex material does these days. It just glimmered with a soft metallic light. She did not look at his feet. She did not have the time. What she looked at nearly all the time was his eyes, his face, and his features. And his features is the operative word in this experience, okay? Not because he was a man, but because he was a strange-looking man. He had an extremely high, broad forehead. She does not remember noticing his nose. He had a slit for a mouth. The slit because the lips were not protruding like ours do. They might have been turned inward. She does not know. He had high cheekbones, but they were not protruding. The bones were heavy underneath the skin. His eyes were exceptionally large.
His head was a different shape?
Yeah, his head. I don't know why, different word there. His head was a different shape. There was no jawbone to see at all, but the shape of his face underneath the eyes was pointed. He had a pointy chin. Well, underneath it was pointed. There was no chin, yes, but below his eyes and down to his chin, the skin was absolutely immobile, as if it had not opened his mouth for ages. He was kind of stiff looking. The dominant shape of his face was blunt-ended triangle, with his chin the blunt end. His eyes were deep blue. He had pupils, and the expression in his eyes were something that she shall never forget. She can remember the man now as distinctly as she saw him then. His ears were not visible, nor any hair, because covering his cranium and his head and ears was a very tight-fitting helmet. And his helmet was made out of what seemed to be like Perpex, some kind of transparent material. It was a translucent material you could not see through. Not on astronauts' helmets, though. The suit fitted his neck, fitted the waist. There was no belt around the middle. He was definitely a man. There were not any seams, fastenings, or buttons, or anything else like that in his clothing. His skin was pink. He was a Caucasian, white male. He did not say anything. He just stood there and looked at her, and she looked at him. If he was trying to give her a message, she did not know what it was. She did not have the impression of receiving anything from him. She felt compelled to look in his eyes, though there was no specific expression in them. He had no eyebrows or wrinkles in his skin, and one got the impression of great intelligence, wisdom even. She had no idea how old he was, but she had the impression he knew everything about her there was to know. She did not hear or see him come into the house, and when he left, he just left. 1 second, she saw him. The next, she did not see him. He just disappeared. He did not disappear in a cloud of vapor or anything like that. He was just not there anymore. He appeared to have been flesh and blood. She certainly could not see through him. He was not a projection and was solid. So this is what we call a bedroom visitor or an entity inside a house.
A bedroom visitation?
Yeah, well, in the house, any place in the house, was when an entity invades your home or appears in your house, like this case. Interesting case.
And what class of encounter would this make?
Type E.
Type E. Okay.
Which is a single humanoid without any UFO nearby or anything like that.
Could be anything.
Yeah, this is by Norman Oliver, English researcher. He wrote the article in UFO Magazine, Volume 11, Number 5.
Okay. So let's go ahead and share the image from the next one here. And let's go ahead and get the shortened link for the giveaway into the chat. Jill, if you wouldn't mind, the bit.ly, so that people can enter the giveaway and you can put their names on the spinner wheel. So here we have a case from London, Chelsea, England, 1954 in the morning. Air Marshal Sir Peter Horsley was phoned by a certain General Martin inviting him to meet a Mrs. Markham that night at her London flat in Smith Street, Chelsea. Morning there in a dimly lit room, he was introduced to a Mr. Janus. Without any preliminaries, writes Sir Peter, quote, Mr. Janus dived straight into the deep end by asking me to tell him all I knew about UFOs. He listened patiently. At the end, I thought I might be equally as direct and ask Janus what his interest was. He answered me quite simply, I would like to meet the Duke of Edinburgh. Good luck. Somewhat taken aback, Sir Peter replied that this would not be easy, but it was here the strangeness of it all started, the man's extraordinary ability to read my thoughts. Close quote. Asked why he wanted to meet Prince Philip, Janus replied, he is a man of great vision, who believes strongly in the proper relationship between man and nature, which will prove of great importance in future galactic harmony. Perhaps you and I can discuss the subject first, and you will be able to judge whether I'm dangerous or not. Sir Peter devotes 14 pages to the ensuing 2-hour discourse, of which selected excerpts follow. Evidently he didn't know Prince Philip as well as some of us do. First of all, Janus claimed that he was indeed an extraterrestrial, and then by pointing out that man was, quote, now striving to break his earthly bonds and travel to the moon and the planets beyond, close quote, he continued, but flight to the stars is man's ultimate dream, although knowledge of the vast distances involved in interstellar flight makes it appear only a dream. Yet perhaps, after 100 years or so, exploration of his own solar system may be complete, and it is just not man's nature to stop there. Just as tribes found other tribes, and Christopher Columbus described on his travels unknown centers of ancient civilizations, so man in his journeys through the universe may find innumerable centers of culture far more ancient than his own. He will discover a wealth of experiences infinitely more startling and beautiful than can be imagined, an infinite variety of agencies and forces as yet unknown. Great fields of gravity and anti-gravity where objects are accelerated across space like giant slingshots, even other universes with different space and time formula. Well, he was right about that. Source Sir Peter Horsley, Sounds from the Other Room.
Yeah, he wrote a book about it, and he details that experience there. Very interesting.
Well, he is a knight of the realm, so I guess we should take his report at face value.
Yeah, what would he make up something like that? I don't know. That's kind of.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But Prince Philip ended up being kind of dodgy, so not sure about that.
All right, let me take the next one. We're almost. This is in the book by George Hunt Williamson, Other Tongues, Other Flesh. This is early 1954 and near March Field, California. Several witnesses were passing by an airfield in a vehicle when they observed a shiny disc-shaped craft resting on the ground. In order to get a closer look, they exited their vehicle and approached the object. The craft was smooth and silvery, and there appeared to be no one around the object. The witnesses then decided to get even closer to the object, when suddenly a man appeared and stepped in front of them. He raised his arm and threw what appeared to be a fireball at them. See what I tell you? The fireball passed by them and struck their vehicle. The witnesses immediately fled the area, driving to the nearest police station. The being or man was described as a tall man-like, and wearing some sort of half mask, like a half mask on his face, apparently metallic. The fireball
sounds like a member of Devo.
Something. The fireball reportedly dented the side of the vehicle and burnt the paint. I guess he wanted them to stay away. I don't doubt it. Yeah, don't be. Only fools rush in, like Elvis said.
That's right. Only fools rush in.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm familiar with that. Other flesh, other tongues, other flesh.
Yeah.
We have another image here. This one seems to have a lot more images than before. Looks almost like the Beatles.
I know you were going to say that. There's only 3, so.
There's only 3, and then the drummer. Drummer's the best seen and not heard. I'm a drummer. Okay, this one is near Acapulco, Mexico. January 1954 at 2 in the morning. While driving the winding roads that separate Mexico City from Acapulco, Armando Zurbarán, his only concern was arriving in the Pacific port city before sunrise in order to meet a business partner. At some point during the drive, he was overcome by an almost hypnotic state of lethargy, which caused him to pull over. Not far ahead of the road, he was able to see a number of men clad in overalls with wide belts gathered around a strange, brilliantly lit object. Before he realized, and having no idea how it happened, he was walking toward the object, escorted by the long-haired men. A slight buzzing sound filled his ears as he entered the saucer. Zurbarán was going down in history as his country's first contactee. How about Salvador Villanueva in 1953? And this was his first question to the ship's captain. Why had he been chosen for this honor? You are neither the first nor last Earthman to be chosen for testing, his host replied. Our task, slow though it may seem, is designed to persuade. We choose the likeliest, most malleable person for contact, so they might better transmit our messages. Zurbarán was then treated to a review of the smallest details of his life on a screen within the vehicle's wall, and a tour of the ship's interior, guided by one of the fair, long-haired crewmen, reminiscent of Adamski's visitors, who answered each of the puzzled human's questions in detail. The space travelers, he learned, employed a gravity repulsion system to cover the distance between their home world and Earth, scanning the space ahead of them with a radar-like device to dispel any objects that might lie in their path. Unlike other contactee stories of the time, Zurbarán's visitors did not claim to originate from any planet in the solar system, nor did they mention their planet of origin by name. The craft, he learned, had taken off while he was unaware and was now in space. Zurbarán peeked out a porthole, hoping for a glimpse of the world seen from above, but he could only see a grayish mist until a distance of 40,000 kilometers, the ship's captain pointed out the planet to him through another porthole. Excited by the vista, the human asked the captain if he could perhaps be taken to visit their world, but his request was turned down. He was told that perhaps someday such an invitation would be tendered, at the right moment. Zurbarán was able to sleep a normal sleep and eat with the UFO's crew. His description of taking a shower in space is particularly memorable. I shall never be able to forget it. That bathroom was a new and unimaginable experience for me. Standing upright, facing an angle of the wall filled with tiny holes, I was covered in warm air, and as it grew stronger, it became transformed into damp air, impregnating my skin like a warm, wet breeze. When I was completely drenched, I was offered a sort of liquid soap, which I rubbed all over myself from head to toe.
Yeah, another naked guy.
What's that?
Another naked person.
Right. More. You keep bringing us these naked people, Albert.
I know.
Standing once more before the warm air sprinklers, I felt the soap begin to evaporate, and my skin became completely clean. The air then ceased to be damp, turning dry and warm instead, becoming colder until agreeably cool. Close quote. Breakfast in orbit around the planet consisted of fruit juices, tasting imperceptibly of mangoes or other tropical fruits. The ship's captain advised him that to his people, milk was a principal source of nourishment, but that they did not get it from cows, but from a mixture of terrestrial and marine plant life. Zurburan ate grilled meat, butter, and cheese in the vehicle's mess room. He was told the provisions were transported around the craft via telepathy. ? Unknown to Zurburan, thousands of miles away in the Pyrenees between Spain and France, Jaime Bordas, a resident of the village of Castel, was engaged in a strange experience with a 6-foot-tall, overall-wearing humanoid with long blonde hair. The otherworldly being would only drink milk as its sole nourishment. 1951. After the meal, the captain proceeded to regale Zurburan with his world's philosophy, religion, and history. Children and the elderly received special consideration, as they should, and there was equality between the occupations. The average lifespan was 250 years, and a collaboration had replaced competition in the area of commerce. A utopia made possible by a being they termed the Master, or Beloved Number 9, who was at the heart of their religion, and who had ruled them for a span of 3,000 Earth years. The spaceship returned Zurburan to his car by the roadside. Confused but excited by his experience, he continued the balance of his drive to Acapulco, learning upon his arrival that it had only taken him an hour and a half to complete his 6-hour journey. He did not see the space people who had befriended him and offered him hospitality again for 15 years, until one night in January 1969, near the outskirts of Mexico City, he gave a ride to a young hitchhiker who turned out to be one of the crewmen of the UFO that night 15 years in the past. Scott Corrales. Interesting.
Yeah, he wrote that in he used to write that journal, Samizdat. Which you can see there, back in the 50s, in 1952, that Adamski wasn't the only one that was claiming contact with long hair occupants and stuff. There were people, all over the place like that. It makes you wonder with some of these stories, maybe they could have been true or not. I don't know. Well, I'm gonna do the next one. Yeah. Go
ask real quickly if this is a real link, Canadian Spider-Man, or if it's just one that you suggested.
Where? Which one?
The one that I put on screen.
Let me see.
We're looking for the link for the giveaway.
Oh, okay. It was asking you that, not me. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But please continue. Go ahead.
I'm gonna do one more.
Okay.
Kind of late now. I gotta walk my dog, and next time we'll do more. Okay?
Great.
So this one next is also another kind of a contactee type deal, and we'll see who wins the book.
All right.
Anyway,
so that is a real link to enter the giveaway after Albert reads this next one. Make sure you go to that URL to get your name on the spinner wheel, and we will be joined shortly by Antiderivative Jill.
All right, this one here is from a place called Los Toldos in the province of Salta, Argentina. Also in January 1954, it was late at night. The witness was a 25-year-old Martin. His name was Anti-Man. Now he's a local Indian cacique, which is a chieftain.
Martin Anti-Man?
Yeah, Martin Anti. Yeah, he's a cacique, which means chieftain, like an Indian chief.
Mm-hmm.
He was in his room alone when he suddenly heard a very high-pitched sound. At the same time, a type of magnetic force somehow introduced him into a type of cabin or elevator, something that looked like elevator, which we had appear in his room, something like the TARDIS. Immediately after, the cabin or elevator departed at fantastic speed, and everything became very silent around him. The door of the elevator or the craft suddenly opened, and he stepped out, finding himself in a sort of mountainous valley, very desolate in appearance. He walked about 100 meters and saw several men carrying large bags on their shoulders. He yelled and whistled at them in order to communicate with them, but these seemed to ignore him. He then heard a voice in his mind that told him that the men did not answer him because they had no brains. That's weird. Okay, and could not hear the voice of the Creator. I could not hear the voice of the Creator. Okay, the voice then told him that he must tell all he could about this vision. Soon he was introduced inside the cabin or elevator-like object again, and moments later the door opened and he found himself back in his room. He never spoke to anyone about this incident for at least 20 years. I will not either. But
wow.
Weird, because it reminds me of another case from New York, Barbara Hudson, that also encountered some kind of elevator type thing in her room, in her apartment, and she was transported on board a ship, even though this guy seems to have been transported to another realm or something. Very weird. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you for going the extra time with us, Albert. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I am now going to summon Antiderivative Jill into the panel. Sorry, I meant to hit remove. I'll just hit stop screen. And we'll go ahead and commence the giveaway. Jill has the link. And I will double check and make sure that she does. And there it is. So as soon as a mod brings the wheel in, we will go ahead and begin the giveaway.
And this is the book right here.
Yeah. I noticed that your books are different colors.
Yeah, the green one here. And, you
and,
see right here,
and Brian Harnish in the chat says, "Thank you, Albert."
You're welcome, Brian.
And there was a comment earlier I wanted to read to you.
That's the Flatwoods thing right here.
Yeah, boy. I've got photos from up close of Frank Fascino Jr.'s, painting and everything. And it's a very scary case, although it does seem that it was some kind of a being in an environment suit. The Flatwoods monster.
There's another description of the entity right here from other people that saw it.
Mm-hmm. Here, let me make you big, and you can share that with us again.
Ooh. Let me find it. That was September 1952, right here. This is the being described by another family, the Snatowski family, was driving in the area. They saw something like that on the road.
Looks exactly the same. I mean, there are differences, but...
Very similar,
yeah. While we're waiting here... I know you're getting ready to go. And here is Darius Munchausen.
Hey, Cardinal. Hey, Albert.
How you doing?
Hi. Good.
There we go.
All right. So, here, yep. We just
How many people do we have entered?
Actually, you know what? I won't do it since I'm spinning it. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. It looks like 9. Yeah, I think we have 9 people.
I think that's everybody, including mods, and that's important. Mods get a chance to win too. I'm the only person that doesn't get a chance to win, which makes me feel bad because most of the people that I have on, I would love to win, copies of UFO magazine signed by Don Ecker and Albert's autograph books, but I have to buy them instead.
No, send me your address, and I have an extra copy of tonight's book, and I'll get it to you.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'll tell you what, Cardinal, here, just share this. That way everyone gets the sound. There you go. All right,
Okay.
You ready?
Let her rip. Thomas Preston.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, man.
And thank you so much, Darius, for helping us out with the wheel.
Of course.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for doing the show. Albert, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. You're welcome, man. Anytime.
And if you will send me your information, you can email me at gil@sunflower.com, and I will get your information to Albert Thomas. Congratulations again. And he says, thank you, Albert Rosales.
You're welcome. Send
So
me
go ahead
his
and-
address and all that. All the
Yeah,
details.
email me, Thomas, your mailing address, and I'll send it on to Albert. And another winner.
Alrighty. Congratulations.
Absolutely. And I'll get one too. Yay!
Yeah, send
Finally
me
I
your
won
address
one.
too, Gil.
All right.
I guess for a time there, I didn't have any books on hand because there were, trouble with the publisher and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
It's good to see that they're all back on.
And I just want to mention one other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be speaker at the 2022 mega conference, UFO mega conference
Mega conference. Where's that?
in Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
Nevada, from March 19 to March 27, 2022, at the Bally's Hotel. I'll be there. I don't know how long I'm going to be there, but I'm one of the invited speakers. So it's going to be over a dozen speakers there, just to let everybody know.
Do you know what other speakers there are?
Right now, I could send you the information, but I don't have the information right in front of me.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you can send me
Okay.
a link or something like that, that would be great.
I will. Okay?
All right. Well, thanks again so much, Albert. even though we had a little bit of internet difficulty, we found our way through it. And Darius, thanks again, and Jill, and Canadian Spider-Man, my wonderful mods. I do appreciate all the help. And for Albert and Darius and Jill and Canadian Spider-Man, it's Cardinal Sin out.